Hey, what's up, YouTube? It's Flex and Joe, and I'm back with another quick EDU session here on my gap fill strategy. I'm going to be answering some questions that I received regarding it. So he says, "Hi, Joe. I'm trying to learn how to chart the gaps, but have some questions for your future gap fill EDU videos." So I appreciate the questions and keep them coming. If you've got more, just throw them down in the comment section below. How do you mark gaps if price like NQ, for example, open between unfilled gaps? Then he says the last 10-minute candle for VIX on September 1st ended at 11:30 in TOS. Do you use that as market close to draw the fibs? And then why do I not delete the fibs once they are filled? So, and then he says, thank you. So you're welcome. I'm glad you find these videos helpful. So let's get into these topics really quick. So first things first, right? Why do I not delete the fibs once they're filled? So when I draw them, and here's a good example of one that took days to fill. When I draw them, like when I draw a gap, right? If I draw it normally from here to where the open is, you'll see that like I have the right extension on. So it just keeps going forever and ever and ever, right? And then what I do is once the gap is filled, I will just go into the properties, turn the right extension off. I actually usually will turn the price and the coefficients off. And I'll just set the end point to the day the gap was filled at the end of the day. So it'll look like this, and I'll do it again for you. So if we had the gap here, we were looking for this gap here. This is the end, the close of the 1530 candle, right? If you're on the 30-minute chart, you want to use the close of the 1530 candle to the open of the 930 candle. This is the gap down that we had, and we had this area here that was this was unfilled, right? So then when we get into this and we start, and I know when we're approaching this, right, and here's the gap, right, we're entering, we pull back some, we enter, we start breaching into this gap. What am I looking for? I'm like, once we get most of the way through it, I'm looking for that gap to fill, right? And I know where these levels are. So, I'll oftentimes just remove this, and what I'll do is I'll go into here, turn these off, all of them off, do not show, change this to 828, change this from 9 to 16, and boom, now I have it here. So that allows me to do like historical analysis and review old charts to see, okay, like there was such and such news on this date. Did we gap? How many days did it take us to fill that gap? And then I can formulate a good strategy, right? Or at least maybe like I don't want to say like a bias, but at least kind of like an outlook, sort of like a if this then that. So if we gap and we really start to run, I'm not looking for us to come back and fill the gap. I'm looking for us to keep, sort of spiking in the direction of the gap. Okay. And in that case, when we gap down, and that just shows a random day. So I'm not sure if we had news today or not, but we probably did. And I'm sure Shiny will, Shiny, you can hit me up in the comments if you know exactly what news we had on the morning of the 19th. But when we just move away from it. So now I'm just watching for them. Whenever we come back into that area, that we're going to potentially fill that and reject. And that's exactly what we did. And that is exactly what I called out in the house of stacks when we got close to this gap fill. So there's that. That answers question 3. So I can answer question 2 and question 1 kind of at the same at the same time. So when we have a holiday, we don't have the New York session, right? And so these gaps are drawn around when there is the most volume, which is in the New York session. So if we have a holiday like Labor Day, I'm going to draw the gap from Friday's close, which is the end of RTH for the New York Stock Exchange, to Tuesday's open, which is the start of the next session, right? I'm going to skip over the holiday. And the reason I do that is because of the lack of market participants on that particular holiday, right? And I have found in my back testing that this is much more reliable than going off of like the holiday prints, right? And like that awkward 1 p.m. close. So, and even though like if you look at, you can look at it that way, like we still filled that gap from the 1 p.m. close here. This is just what I found that I like to do, right? And you can see like where we rejected here on Wednesday. There's a lot of reasons to, reject in this area, whether it's like these stuck buyers, whether you had like, just wicking over the sellers like right here in their last attempt, like because they pushed it down from here. Like this is like your last like wick up before these bigger moves down. And if you drew the fib from like the the Labor Day close to here, like it basically results in a lot of like the same thing, you know? So it's not all that much different. I just like to be consistent, and there's a method like to the madness. So I stick consistent with that method, which is to draw it from the close on Friday to the open on Tuesday. Now, um, if you look, here's what we did, right? Friday to Tuesday. So following Friday to Tuesday, what would we have had? We would have had this area here, right? That would have been the unfilled gap. So then how do I mark the gaps if price like NQ open between the unfilled gaps, which is basically here, right? So we have this unfilled gap and then we gap up and we open in here. So he's saying, how do I draw that? So what I'll do is I'll still draw, you know, the next color coded, right? So any gaps into a Wednesday are purple, right? The gaps, you know, starting on Friday are always green, right? So Friday to Monday or Friday to Tuesday in the case of a holiday, I always go with green. So that's just how I know green is weekend gaps. And even if it's a long weekend, it's the same thing still applies. So, you know, gaps from Tuesdays into Wednesdays are purple. So I will still draw it. Sometimes I might just like increase, I think on this one, like just for the sake of this video, I increased the width of them to 2. So they're a little bit more prominent and easier to see. And then that's what I would do. So I'd have this area marked, right? And it can be in, if need be, or I feel like my chart is too cluttered or too crowded, I might just like really turn down the transparency on this so it's like barely there, you know, and that might even make it easier to see. And then at the end of the day, once the day is complete, I'm going to adjust it, and I'm just going to have this green section, this green portion that of this unfilled gap left over right here. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to draw the purple unfilled zone, which is from here to here. Now, I called this out in Stacks chat as well when this was happening, that if we look at how price had moved up, right? Price had made its move this way. And then we came back down and we were holding inside of this 61.8. And if we go to the 10-minute chart, you know, you can see just how that panned out, right? Like we had, you know, one more big push down, and then the next candle instantly reclaimed up, and then the following candles were wicking like right off that 61.8. Not only does that show me I should get out if I was short, it's also telling me, based off my experience, I should probably consider flipping long and then look exactly what happened, right? Like sellers realized that they weren't going to be able to push down any lower, and suddenly they got squeezed out into the end of the day, all the way back up to the same pivot where they started this move. So now we know that this is like a strong low area, right? How do I know it's a strong low? Because it broke the high that initiated this move, right? And they broke it, they sustained it, and they broke a higher high here over previous high of day. So I'll have the purple gap here, this purple rectangle. Again, I do turn down the transparency, but I'll just turn it up so it makes it easier to see. So I have this purple gap, I have this green gap that are overlapping. I'm going to be looking in the future, right? Because I set these usually to be like a year out, so I'm not going to miss them. I'll be looking in the future to see what happens when we get to the top of this, realizing that this is a double unfilled gap. And then as we move lower, I'll be looking for what will happen as we fill the green gap and what will happen if we fill the purple gap, right? So I will be using those as downward directional targets if I am short. And then if I'm looking, or if I'm not short, or if I'm looking to get long, or if I'm, trying to see if there's going to be a reversal, I'll be looking for those areas as areas of interest as well. All right. And then so the same thing, that answers kind of question 1 and question 2, but just because you specifically talked about the VIX, right? So here we have the VIX. Just disregard my alerts. I adjust these every single day to just to see how price action is reacting, right? And since we've been in such a tight range overnight, I'll keep my alerts there like that. But same thing for the holiday, right? So based off of the holiday, here's Friday's close on the 29th. Right there. And then here's Tuesday's open right here. And this would be, as I said, like a green gap. So then I would be looking at like, how did the VIX gap fill react, right? So we had, again, from here to, this is Tuesday's low of day. Send this out for a year. So now I'm looking at this, and then we've encroached down upon it a little bit more. Looks like, and I'm going to go to the 30-minute because it's a little bit easier to see. Oops, way off there. It looks like this was the low of day going into the close. So we closed literally at the lows at 1642. So now I'll change this to be 1642. And boom, that leaves me with this is the unfilled portion of this gap up, right? So, and then of course, well, we gap down, right? So we gap down from here to here, and you can see we almost tapped the 50% fib, right? But we were rejecting this 50% fib, so it's like double confluence. Hey, if we don't push up, then we're gonna push back down. And so now we're looking to see based off of news, right? We have NFP tomorrow and all that, if we're gonna fill this gap up or not. So for the sake of this too, I'll have this. Oops, I did it backwards, whatever. But yeah, this is the, I just messed this up like by, should look more like this. There we go. So I'm looking at, okay, I have an unfilled gap up here, right? And I have this area that's unfilled here, right? And if we just look at how this gap performed, right? We had this gap up, right? We push up, here's your gap up. We come down, right? And I'm sure this is actually probably very close to that 38.2. Yeah, it is. Large gaps, when you have large gaps, the bigger fib levels can be more important, or can be I guess more respected. So look what happened, right? We pushed up, come down to like the 38 area, right? Like perfect. Here we're at 32, 38. We try to break out of the gap and spike in the continued direction of the gap, right? They just barely break over high of day. They can't do it, can't sustain it. It comes all the way back down and closes under the 50. So, or sorry, closes under the 38 and very close to the 50, continues down through the 50 right here just after the after hours. And now, like, I'm kind of setting up sort of a bias, if you will, that okay, what am I expecting from here? And I realize this is starting to get kind of cluttered now. So I'm expecting that price is going to come down and show some respect of this 50 line, which it did, right? Yeah, I'm going to remove these just to make it easier. Going to show some respect of the 50 line, which it did because it keeps coming down. I want price to keep coming down. It comes damn near close to 61. I know this is in after hours, but I'm still watching these as the levels. So when we open up and we're showing respect of the 50 here, we come down under the 61 and we just start kind of bouncing in between here, hovering, not able to push back out, right? Repeatedly, they were trying to push back out and they couldn't. So then what do we do when we make this move upward? I'm looking for us to come down, and now here we are. We close under and make a new low of day. So realistically speaking, at most, I would be expecting a spike to here and then potentially a drawdown to fill the gap, right? And that's all dependent upon news, what happens, etc. If we hover at this 78.6 and we start to make a move here, I'm not just going to go blindly like short or just, well, and in this case, because this is VIX, thinking that the market is just going to flip and then, like turn bullish, right? Because bullish VIX is bearish for the market. So I'm not going to be thinking that, oh, hey, we're right here, we're just going to turn. I'm going to wait to see the price action and then react to it, not predict it. But, on the off chance that we continue to move higher and then move higher, I'd actually be expecting we're going to go all the way back to the other side. So you just need to go and backtest this and study like kind of the nuanced things and how this performs. But there's a lot of times where we'll fill about the 3/4 of the way mark. There's 78.6. We'll fill that portion of the gap and then we won't fill the entire thing. And when that happens, and especially if we break out the other side and then continue going, that's a very strong move, right? And I will not look to fade that move at all because it's telling me, hey, there is a reason why this area is not filling, right? If we go back to NQ, NQ is showing us the exact same thing, right? So it's not quite the 78.6, right? That's a little bit lower than where we wicked, but the same thing. I'm seeing that this is pretty strong. There's a reason that this is not filling. So we may come down and just chop in here, right? We're going to be inside. Looks like we're going to open up inside of the prior day's range after wicking above its high. Might be a choppy Thursday, maybe even a choppy Friday. However, I'm waiting to see what the price action tells me. So I hope that this helps. I hope this answers your questions. I'm sorry this ran on for like 15 minutes, but if you found it helpful, please give it a like and don't forget to subscribe. If you have any more questions, hit me up in the comment section down below and I'll be happy to answer them. Thanks for tuning in.